Hi, this is Mark with Vinyl Crush, and I have an armload of records to show you today from Record Store Day Drop 3 2020. Everything from Johnny Cash to Alice Cooper to Miles Davis. So let's dive in. I'm going to start with Johnny Cash. This is classic Cash. This is the early mixes that Johnny did when he made the Classic Cash album. What happened was in 1986, Johnny Cash moved to Mercury from Columbia, I believe. And when he moved there, they decided that if he re-recorded some of his really good music, that they could re-release it as classic Johnny Cash on the Mercury label. So he got together in a studio with a bunch of musicians and recorded some of his best songs. It's good old school rockabilly Johnny Cash. Ring of Fire, I Walk the Line, Folsom Prison Blues, that kind of thing. It's really well done. The packaging is very nice. Some liner notes and some descriptions, and the vinyl is in really good shape. This is a really good album. I was really happy to see it. And if you're a Cash fan, this is probably a must-have. I think it's kind of stripped down. It's a little bit raw. It's really nice. And if you're new to Johnny Cash, I think this is an amazing album. I would highly recommend it. So this was an album that if I didn't get a hold of, I was going to cry. So this is Charles Mingus' album. This came out in, I think, 59. It's a great album. Better Get It In Your Soul, Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. A lot of these songs have been re-recorded or borrowed by a number of musicians. Jeff Beck, Joni Mitchell, not to mention a bunch of other jazz musicians. This is amazing. This is a remaster. This is a 60-year anniversary remaster that they did on this, and it sounds really good. It's hard to find. I've been looking for an OG of this album or something that would sound better than just a normal repress. I can't even find a repress used anymore. I would have to buy one of the new represses. But anyway, amazing album. Was really happy to get this. There's a limited edition of 3,000 copies, and I was really stoked to get it. He put it out on the 6i Columbia labels. Lots of pictures and information on the inside. The album cover is actually just the original. The original was not a gatefold, but the original cover, including the original back cover without an added barcode or anything like that, which is really nice. So really happy with this album. Delighted that I didn't miss getting a copy of this. This was a surprise for me. This is World Music Network's Rough Guide to Brazilian Psych. This is Brazilian Psych from 1970 to present. Buying an album like this, you never know what you're going to get. The recording quality, whether they really got good music on here. This is amazing. I was so happy to hear this. Every song was delightful in some kind of way. The new stuff, the old stuff. I love this album. I think there's a couple thousand out there. There may be some more. So actually, this is limited to 1,000. So there still may be some out there. If you can find one, if you like psych or want to get into world music, this is a great album. Really recommend it. Last Record Store Day, I picked up Jimmy Giuffre. I really hadn't heard any of his music much before, and I loved the album that I got, so I picked up the next one. So this is him with Bly and Swallow, Bly on piano and Swallow on double bass. Giuffre just plays clarinet. It's very intimate. It's definitely third string music, free jazz, avant-garde. Although again, I have bent ears, but I did not find that there's always something there to cling to. I never felt like I was out there floating in free jazz land that wasn't pleasurable or fun in some kind of way. I really like what Giuffre does with his music. This is a gatefold, lots of information on the inside, double album, never before released. I think there was 3,000 copies. I'm not sure, actually. I think there was 3,000 of this. I can't guarantee that. Anyway, recommend. Great album. Please check it out. So next I have the original motion picture soundtrack to Pinata, which was never a movie. This is really a concept album. Freddie Gibbs got together with Madlib, and Madlib is a producer. Madlib gave Freddie about 8 CDs worth of music to choose his beats from. He chose them, laid down some rap on them. This is great gangster rap. When he was, at some point, Freddie was heard to say that he considered this a kind of a gangster blaxploitation film on wax. So in some way, shape, or form, he must have had a movie in mind when he was producing the music for this, and it's phenomenal. This is a half-speed remaster. They edited it down to 1 album. It sounds really good. I had not heard the original, so I don't have anything to compare it to, but it's a great album, a great concept album, a lot of fun. Highly recommend it. Then we have Alice Cooper. This is 1982, live at the Apollo in Glasgow. I love Alice Cooper. I was listening to him in the very beginnings. I saw him live twice. I saw him in the early 70s when he did the original Welcome to My Nightmare tour, which was entertainment at its best at the time. I mean, it was like a rock opera. The performances were phenomenal. The music was great. Alice was at his peak. Alice Cooper is amazing. I think some of his studio albums are a little bit produced, so the guitars aren't as rough and raw as I like. The stuff he's doing now with Joe Perry and Hollywood Vampires, I think, is a little, Joe Perry's guitar is rougher, it's rawer, it sounds really good. They actually re-recorded a couple of Alice's songs on those albums, and it sounds really, really good. So, but back to the live album here, I didn't find it remarkable in any way. The recording isn't amazing. The sound isn't amazing. The band wasn't having a peak night. Alice doesn't sound amazing. It was not a transformative experience in any kind of way listening to this. I think, if anything, Alice is, as hard as he pushes himself, I mean, he's quite a performer, don't get me wrong. I think he's amazing, but he sounds tired. He sounds like he's working a little hard, and it just, I just, if you're a completist or a huge Alice fan, then you want this in your collection. Otherwise, I would let it go. Double album. Great song list, just not a great performance. J&K Stonebone. So this is a remarkable album. This came out in '69, and at the time, the record label, it was A&M CTI, I believe. They just couldn't quite grab onto it. It was kind of psych jazz in the beginnings, fusion jazz. Herbie Hancock is on here. It's J.J. Johnson and Kai Winding are both trombone players, and they bounce off of each other the way 2 guitar players might trade licks. It's really fun to hear them play. George Benson is on here. Herbie Hancock is on here. A great set of musicians, but they just decided not to release it. It was actually released only in Japan. So there's a number of albums that were pressed for Japan only, and those now, if you can find one, are worth well over $1,000 a piece. This has never been put out on CD, and it's never been even available streaming. So it's really amazing that they finally put one of these out. There are 4,000 limited edition, remastered or newly mastered for vinyl. I think this is a beautiful album. I love psych jazz. I love some of it never goes too far off into fusion. It's not pop sounding, and that's one of the reasons that they couldn't really use the record at the time. So love this. A&M labels, a lot of fun. This is a gatefold sleeve, a little story there to read about. Love this album. Highly recommend it. So Slapp Happy, this is an album that I did some reading on before I bought it and hadn't heard it, so I went and bought it, and I'm stunned. This is such a great find. I love this album. So Slapp Happy was an ambient pop group. They were around in the early 70s. In like 72, they put together an album with 5 members from Faust that they were tossing around the name of Casablanca Moon. They put the album together, and the label Polydor didn't like it, so they took it to Virgin. Virgin liked it, so they had to re-record it. So Virgin got a bunch of musicians. They had like a whole cast of musicians. They had like a concert of musicians playing on that album, and apparently it's a good album. But the original version that was recorded for Polydor is a little bit more intimate. This has Dagmar Krause on vocals. She's got this amazing voice. It's really kind of cabaret infused, avant pop with some little jazz and a little jangly kind of indie pop in here too. It's an amazing album. I like every song on here. I love Krause's voice. Highly recommend it. Check it out. Rory Gallagher. I really wanted to get this. This is another album I was going to cry if I didn't get. This is 1972, live in a radio station, WNCR, I believe, in Cleveland, Ohio. He was supposed to do a show with his band in Cleveland that night, and apparently the venue flooded, and so they couldn't play. So he went to the radio station with an acoustic guitar and a harmonica and played a set of music, and it's amazing. It's really intimate. He's such an accomplished blues musician for such a young man at the time too. The disc jockey asked some questions and they bantered a little bit, and they had a great rapport, which I don't usually like talking on records, and yet it just made it even more intimate. I enjoy listening to this record tremendously. I think there's a couple of thousand copies out there, so I recommend getting one if you can still find one. Really, really wonderful recording of Rory's. I saw him live in '74. And opening for him was their first world tour, or first tour was Rush, and it was a completely transformative experience. And I guess in 1982 he opened for Rush, so they traded places. Anyway, this is an album that if I didn't get, I was going to cry. Miles Davis. This is Double Image. This is a bunch of songs in sort of growing stages of what later became Bitches Brew. These are songs that they were playing around with that never fully formed, probably. This is 1970. Miles had just done Fillmore East, where they convinced him to do something that was a little more fusiony, so that he could appeal to younger audiences, and he really wanted to do that. So that's what this is. This is really, he decided to take, sort of pop and rock and jazz and maybe even some classical, and created what they later simply called fusion, with Bitches Brew, which is a really life-changing album for the world of jazz. This album is incredibly good. It's double album. It's a gatefold sleeve. Beautiful pictures, some stuff. There's actually a couple of inner sleeves that have some pictures and stories on the back of each one. I love this album. Chick Corea, Ron Carter, Wayne Shorter, Herbie Hancock, John McLaughlin all play on this. They have tablas and sitars. It's a sweet album. I got this. I got all my stuff and got home, and on this record, the punch hole part had come off in production and ended up on the vinyl and got sealed in the vinyl. So I had a copy that was unplayable. I was going to scream. I was going to cry. I was so unhappy. I called the record shop. He said, I'm sold out. So I got in my car. It hit all the record stores here in Portland. It wasn't until I got to the last one that they had 2 copies left, and I grabbed them. So thank God I got a copy of this album, so I didn't have to cry. So that's what I have tonight. I will be doing the Black Friday Record Store Day and some other videos coming up. If you like what you see, subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.